Hi everyone, this is Terry. Well, Valentine's Day is right around the corner, and I decided I wanted to stitch a pattern on one of my t-shirts for Valentine's, and this is what I came up with. And I want to show you how I created this. I won't do all of it, I'll just show you briefly. And then the second part of this video is I want to show you how I created a chenille heart. So stay tuned. The first thing let's do is choose File New. You can choose the shapes of the heart from the Shape menu, but I like the one that is in the Outline Shapes. And here it is. And I chose the Events. Now there are basic shapes as well, but I chose these. We'll just drag this heart on the screen. I have a 5x7 hoop, by the way, in case you're trying to recreate this. And what we'll do is we'll drag this out so it's larger. Now that we have it the size that we want, the next thing we want to do is perhaps change the color. And let's be a little different, and we'll choose a blue on the outside. And I want to choose that blue again, and the colors used, you can make sure you select the same color. We want to have a zigzag stitch on the outside, and on the fill I want it to be a stipple. Now the next thing I'll do is go to my sewing attributes, and for my zigzag stitch I want the width of that to be 3.5, so I'll change it to 3.5. And you'll notice that when you are dealing with shapes, you can change the shape of the points of corners. So if you want to have this sharper shape, you can do that. And I'll leave it with that sharper shape. And the next thing I want to do on the run pitch, that is your stitch length. I want to change that to 2.5. Now if I had a real abrupt curve or tight curves, I'd probably leave it at 2. And on my spacing, I'd like it to be a little larger, so I'll make it 7.5. And we'll see how that looks. Because the showcase of this is not going to be the stipple stitch, it's really going to be the other shapes. And I just want to make sure that I didn't think I changed that. So let me make that 7.5, and there we go. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is choose Import, and I'll choose this little heart here. We'll just drag it on the screen. And for this one, I want to make it larger as well. I'll just do one of these, and you'll get the idea of what you can do, and you can create your own. And we'll move it and make it a little rotated a bit. And I'll make it a little bit larger. Okay, if I'm satisfied with that, the first thing I need to do is the hole sewing. To do that, I need to select everything. And the reason I want to do the hole sewing is because I do not want that stipple to stitch out underneath this heart. So now that I've done that, I'll select the heart, and now's the time for me to change some of the stitch patterns. There are several things that I can choose from. So while I have them selected, I'll go back into the Shape menu, and I can choose a different stitch on the outside. Let's choose a chain stitch. I like that. And we'll change the color of it. We'll make this a dark blue. And then what we'll do on the fill stitch, I can choose a flexible spiral stitch, and I have that heart shape. Go into the sewing attributes, and I can change the spacing of it to increase the spacing. Let's see how that looks. And that looks pretty good. So that's one idea that I could choose. Another idea that I could choose is to change it to a motif stitch. And there is actually a heart pattern, so I could go with that. You get it. You can change it to anything you want. So that gives you one idea. Let me go back and show you my original, just in case you want to look at it and see how I created it. And in the case of this, each time I had a heart, what I had to do is to select that heart and select the background using the control key and use the cut hole in the modify overlaps. You have to select them separately like that in order to remove the background. Okay, let's clear the screen and let's try something new. Not too long ago, I saw something that was a chenille. It was a chenille rug that was being created. And then I also saw a video where there's a software that actually has an automatic stitch that's a chenille stitch. And I wondered if I could create it with our software. So I took a shape, and we'll choose a heart, and we'll draw that shape on the screen. And let's change the outline of it to a zigzag stitch. And we'll change the color of this, and we'll make it black, and you'll understand why in a moment. And then what I did is I created a decorative fill stitch, and you notice that that decorative fill stitch is just lines, and I named it chenille. These are a 1/2 inch apart. That's 50 millimeters, and I'll show you how I created it, because the tool I have will cut through the channel of the fabrics. Now, one of the things that I have a luminaire, so I could project this down and know where to place my 3 layers of fabric on my background to create this. But if you don't have something that's going to project, then what you want to do is you want to go in and to create an offset line. I want it to be an outward line, and I want it to be at 0.1 millimeter, and you can't select 0, and I'll choose OK. Now it'll choose the same stitch type. I'll change that from zigzag to first of all to a different color, and let's make that gold, and then we'll make it a straight stitch or a running stitch. And so now you see that zigzag stitch here, and we need to move that up. And actually, it's not a zigzag, it's a running stitch. Forgive me. Let's make it red. I don't really think you can see it that well. Okay, here's the idea. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch out this heart shape on my background fabric. It could be my t-shirt, but first I would try this out. I would never ever do something like this first on a garment. I would stitch it out to make sure I like it. Now what I'll do is I'll lay 3 pieces of fabric right side up on top of that line. I want to make sure that they are exceeding the outside of the line, because I'm going to have to trim this fabric away before I finish. Now what I'm doing is I'm stitching my channels. Now, one of the problems with doing this in Design Center, and you'll notice it in a minute, it's stitching down everything. You notice it's stitched right here, and it's going to stitch every one of these ends. But it's a small price to pay, because otherwise what I would have to do is digitize each one of these lines, and I don't want to do that. So what's going to happen is I'll let it continue to stitch all of this and all the way around the design, and when it gets to the end before the next color change, or at the next color change, I'll remove it from the hoop, and I'll take my scissors and I'll trim as close as I can around the outside of the shape. Then I'll take one of my favorite tools, because I use it often, and that's my seam ripper, and I'll remove a couple of stitches at the end of each channel so that I can get my tool in between this to trim or cut through the chenille channels, because you have to be able to do that. After I've trimmed around my design, taken my chenille tool and run through the channels by relieving those stitches on the end, then what I'll do is I'll put it back in the hoop, and I'll go ahead and I'll stitch my zigzag stitch on the outside. I'll then take a toothbrush or a chenille brush, and I'll fluff up the fabric in the center. Or you can throw it in the washing machine, and it will make it into chenille. Many of us that are old enough to remember the chenille bedspreads know what the look looks like. But if you don't know it, go out and look online And just look up, I would go to Shabby Fabrics, and you'll see the chenille rug that they created. It was my inspiration for this. I hope that this has given you some ideas of how you can use your software to create your own designs. If you like my videos, please like and subscribe to them and share them with a friend. And if you have any comments or questions, please post them online on YouTube. I do respond to those questions. Thanks and have a great day. And if it's cold where you are, stay in and stay safe.